Right, let's move on with a look through the top headlines in today's French newspapers. Today is International Women's Day, and its campaign theme for 2017 is Be Bold for Change. Florence Fillon, we know, has been checking out how it's being reported on in the French papers. Hi there.
Hey, Kat.
And a lot of the French papers seem to think that there is still a lot of work to be done for women's rights around the world.
Let's start with Libération, the left-wing paper that says that the fight for women's rights is far from over. You can see here they're talking about le torchon rebrûle. So this is an expression in French that means that the fight is on. Le Torchon Brûle, though, is the name of a feminist publication in the 1970s. So
a torchon is a tea towel?
It's actually a tea towel, but in this case, torchon actually means little torch.
Okay,
so it's a
like
little torch that's
like a
burning.
Statue of Liberty.
Exactly,
Okay.
a little torch that shows differences between people. So
you can note that one down.
Exactly. It's a good. I learned this expression too. Now, Libération points out that this edition of International Women's Day is taking place in a tense climate for women's rights. You have a very reactionary political climate here in France and around the world as well, threats for abortion rights, the election of Donald Trump. You can see here Libération saying it's an infinite struggle for women's rights.
And many women's organisations and unions have called for women around France and around the world, indeed, to strike today, starting at 3:40 p.m. That's to reflect the pay gap that still exists here in France.
There is still a pay gap here in France. On average, it's about 26%. Hence the...
That's huge.
It's huge, exactly, on average. But hence the 3:40 p.m. Essentially, that's the time when a woman stops being paid compared to a man given a full day's work. Now, Le Monde takes a closer look at just what can explain the pay gap. And there are lots of factors. It's a very complicated thing. Maternity leave, for instance, unfortunately holds women back. Women continue to do the vast majority of household chores, and this slows down their investment in their profession. And another very important factor is that when you look at low-paid, undervalued jobs, well, a majority of people working in those sectors are women. And those are some of the factors that explain this pay gap.
All right, and Le Parisien is looking at inequalities that exist beyond the sphere of work.
If you needed a reminder, Kat, well,
Thanks.
take a look.
Cheerful start to my day.
Exactly. Take a look here at Aujourd'hui en France, Le Parisien. They have this weird little graphic looking at these inequalities that plague our lives. What is it like being a woman today? Well, you can see this little girl being, all these little witches flying around her, casting spells, so she'll earn less money, she'll feel less intelligent, and this is a reference to a recent study in Science magazine that showed that girls as young as 6 years old don't feel as smart as their male or boy buddies, I guess you could say. And then, of course, you have to be very careful as to what clothes you wear, whether it's when you're walking down the street or taking the metro here in France. I'm sure we all have
don't
our
we know
own
about
little
that?
experiences about that.
That's for another time. Inequality does continue in France, as we know. Also in French politics. I think that's no surprise to any of our viewers. We're always talking about male candidates, male politicians, that kind of thing. A law was actually voted in the year 2000 to close the equality gap between men and women in the political life.
It's a really interesting law from the year 2000. Essentially, it forces all political parties to include equal numbers of men and women on party lists for municipal, regional, and European elections, so not presidential elections. Now, this move has been credited with helping to increase the number of female lawmakers, even though 17 years later, there's still a lot of work to be done. If you look at the French Parliament, for instance, only 27% of MPs are women. So you can see here L'Humanité, the communist paper, saying it's grand time, it's about time there was equality between men and women.
All right, so let's stay with the political world, moving on from the women's rights issue. We've got those latest revelations coming out in the Canard Enchainé newspaper about François Fillon, the presidential candidate for the Conservative Republicans Party. Now, this flow is the same paper that's been that thorn in François Fillon's side for so many weeks. It first broke the Penelope Gate scandal.
And it's breaking another story today. Take a look at this article here. Essentially, according to the Canard Enchainé, Fillon did not report an interest-free 50,000 euro loan he received from a billionaire friend. Now, he reportedly received this loan in 2017 and forgot to report it to a state transparency watchdog.
All right, but this wasn't a gift, it was a loan, and as I understand it, Fillon does say that he paid the loan back. So what's the issue?
Well, the issue is just who this friend is.
Okay.
This is a business tycoon named Marc Ladreit de la Lacharrière, so quite a long name
Trips
there.
off the tongue.
He is a CEO of a company that owns a literary magazine called La Revue des Deux Mondes. Now, this might be a familiar name. This is a publication that paid Penelope Fillon, so Fillon's wife, 100,000 euros between 2012 and 2013, but there's little evidence of work that she did at that publication. Investigators are actually taking a closer look at this job and a possible link between that job and the fact that this billionaire received the highest honor you can get in France, the Légion d'honneur, in 2011 when Fillon was prime minister.
All right, let's just move on to a very sad story that's shocked a lot of people around the world. I know that's for true. Poachers who broke into a zoo close to Paris earlier this week, they shot dead a rhino and sawed off one of its horns.
That's right. This was at the zoo in Thoiry in the west of Paris. It's a really cool zoo. It's kind of like a safari park where you can go around in your car. So zookeepers found this rhino, a 4-year-old white rhino named Vince, dead. So he'd been shot and his horn had sawed off. Now, Le Figaro takes a closer look at just how valuable these horns are. They cost between 30,000 and 40,000 euros. Detectives say there's an established link between France and other parts of the world. You can see they're saying how the horn is worth more than gold and cocaine.
It's a very shocking story indeed. We'll have more details on that later on in the programme. Thanks for now. Flo Villamino there, looking through the French papers.